When someone steps into the woods with a high-powered rifle and camouflage, they usually feel a deep sense of control. You're armed, you're prepared, and you're stepping into the wild as the apex predator. But that confidence relies on a massive assumption. It assumes you understand exactly what's out there. In reality, the deep wilderness is vast, unmonitored, and entirely cut off from the world. That isolation creates a terrifying blind spot. You might be out there scanning for deer or elk, completely unaware that another human is using the exact same environment to hunt you. When malice enters the equation, the playing field flips instantly. It doesn't matter how well you blend in or how many rounds you carry. If an unseen stalker wants to do you harm, your preparation means absolutely nothing. Take the case of a father who decided to introduce his 10-year-old son to the sport in upstate New York. It was broad daylight. They were armed with sniper rifles, and they set up in a familiar, well-lit clearing to wait for game. The wait was slow, and the boy was getting bored. As soon as they packed up and started moving, the father heard footsteps. He signaled his son to raise his rifle, expecting a deer. Instead, a man with a deeply unsettling face leaned out from behind a tree, staring at them from a distance. The father immediately pushed his son's gun down and steered him away. They stopped later to eat, assuming the strange encounter was behind them. Then the footsteps returned. The exact same man was peering out from another tree, much closer this time. Fed up and disturbed, the father left his son where they were sitting and marched directly toward the tree line to confront the stalker. Before he reached the tree, the man slipped out of sight, and the father heard a heavy thud on the ground. He crept closer, weapon drawn, until he looked down. Resting face first in the dirt, completely detached from a body, was a freshly severed human head. He didn't even look up to see where the stalker had gone. He sprinted back to his son, told him to run, and they fled. The next day, he learned the horrible context of what they had stumbled into. 2 heavily armed local hunters had recently vanished without a trace in those exact same woods. The sun was shining, they had high-powered rifles, yet none of that mattered. When a deranged human target decides to ambush you in their own territory, your physical weapons offer zero psychological defense against the unknown. That false sense of security extends to groups, too. A group of 5 friends headed into the sprawling Colorado wilderness for an elk hunt. They had multiple large tents, plenty of food, and everyone was carrying a hunting rifle. During their daytime trek, they passed 3 filthy, unkempt men walking the trails. The strangers gave a slow, menacing nod as they passed. They looked entirely adapted to the deep woods, and while the encounter spooked the group, the men eventually disappeared into the timber. The hunt went on. By nightfall, they had cooked a deer and retreated to their separate tents, but one of the friends couldn't sleep. Hours into the pitch-black night, he heard slow footsteps approach his tent. He froze silently in his sleeping bag as an unseen hand grabbed the outside of the fabric and began pulling down the zipper. The zipper stopped halfway, and the footsteps shuffled toward the other tent. Assuming his friends were playing a prank, he waited a few minutes, got up, and crept over to scare them. When he looked inside, the 3 dirty men from the trail were already there, injecting his friends with tranquilizers. He screamed. The other 2 awake hunters stormed out of their tent with rifles and fired warning shots into the trees to scare the attackers away. The gunfire illuminated the darkness, revealing something far worse. The surrounding bushes rustled, and multiple men who had been silently surrounding the camp scattered in all directions. In an environment like this, a large, well-equipped group doesn't guarantee safety. It actually turns you into a highly visible, static target. An organized, silent threat can easily surround your camp and wait for you to go to sleep. Even if you are an expert operating alone in the dark, technology can quickly turn against you. Consider a hardcore hunter who set up in an elevated tower deep in the woods behind his property, scanning the pitch-black area using advanced night vision equipment. He was waiting for wild hogs. When movement finally registered in his scope, he zoomed in and realized he wasn't looking at an animal at all. It was a man in dark clothing, dragging a heavy, bloody sack through the dense brush. The hunter watched in horror, suspecting he was witnessing a killer disposing of a body. Then the man stopped, turned his head, and looked directly up at the tower. The hunter ducked below the wooden ledge, trembling, hoping the absolute darkness would conceal him. Instead, he heard a foot strike the wooden ladder of his tower. The whole structure shook as heavy boots started stomping up the rungs. The climber eventually stopped and jumped back down to the forest floor. After 10 agonizing minutes of silence, the hunter scrambled down the ladder, flipped on a flashlight, and bolted for his house. Within seconds, manic footsteps began crunching loudly behind him. He spun around, saw the man inches from his face, and fired a point-blank shot into his stalker's shoulder before finishing his sprint home. The police arrived swiftly. They followed the blood trail from seized body bag directly to the wounded stalker, who was hiding under a log. He was a wanted fugitive, arrested on the spot for the murder of a local store owner. Advanced technology, like a night vision scope, gives you a massive advantage over an animal, but it paradoxically heightens terror when it reveals horrors you were never meant to see, trapping you in a sudden, paralyzing fight-or-flight scenario with a killer. We enter the woods believing our rifles and gear make us untouchable, but these encounters suggest that while a gun might help you survive a confrontation, no piece of equipment can prevent the moment you realize you are no longer the one in control. Surviving an encounter like this exacts a heavy psychological toll. The deep woods lose their appeal. The silence feels like an ambush waiting to happen, leaving a permanent scar of paranoia that changes how you view isolation forever. Animal prey behaves on predictable instincts. They react to noise, scent, and movement in ways you can map out and control. Human hunters operate on an entirely different level. They are unpredictable, adaptable, and often sadistic. In these stretches of isolated timber, the traditional hierarchy of the wild dissolves. When the hunter becomes the prey, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown. Just make sure you aren't being